Adam, we got a game week after a win. We've been waiting for this for a long time, and we got to talk about a win on Saturday. But now we get to talk about trying to go for a winning streak here. Obviously, it's been we talked about it before, but like just a whole new attitude around this program, and it's continued into this week. And I don't know about you, but I'm impressed with the way that you shift a culture in a matter of a couple weeks.
It's really impressive. We thought that Mike Sanford and Gerald Chapman were pushing all the right buttons, and they go out there and show that they were. And so you mentioned that we needed a win. Obviously, the players did, because had that gone poorly on Saturday, then I don't know how you bounce back this season. So they did, at least for now, save the season, and it's not going to get easier, though. We knew that this was going to be a difficult stretch of the season, really starting with this road trip. And yeah, Arizona State will come in here, and that'll be a winnable game. But yeah. I mean, 5 of your last 6 games are really, really tough opponents. So these guys are playing music and trying to simulate game day. Maybe we should just have a chainsaw noise playing in our cars on the drive home today, because it's one of the most annoying places to cover a game because of that stupid noise they play throughout the game.
That's true. I forgot about that. I actually like going to Corvallis. I think the stadium's not bad, but I forgot about the chainsaw. You're right. That is kind of annoying. I better gear up for that. But I've been asked this questions, and so let's talk about this. I've been asked this question about how much of what we saw on Saturday is sustainable for going through the rest of the season. For me, I think that what we saw defensively can be sustainable. I mean, when you completely revamp the scheme and you got guys that are flying around like that, I think that's sustainable. You certainly can't take the 50,000 fans that were here and bring them to Corvallis with you. That place is only holding 26 right now anyway. You can't bring that. You have to manufacture some energy. But I do think the defense is sustainable. How much of what you've seen on Saturday do you think is sustainable?
I think some of it. Now, I don't think they're going to start shutting every opponent out and limiting them to 35 rushing yards for a game. I think that might be more of an anomaly in terms of what the box score looks like at the end of the game. But we expected this defense to be pretty darn good coming into the season, and that was the most head-scratching part of the first 5 games. Was we kept talking about it after game about how are guys like Terrence Lang and Josh Chandler-Semedo not playing better. It just did not make sense. And I don't want to spend the next 6 weeks just continuing to harp on Chris Wilson and how poor a job he did as a defense coordinator here. But he talked for a year and a half about how his best attribute as a defensive coordinator is that he's a custom tailor. And it took for him to get fired for them to do exactly that. Right. They created new positions, put guys in positions where they can succeed. And that didn't happen until Chris Wilson was fired. So that was a part of it that I don't know if it was stubbornness or what, but clearly these guys needed a different role, and it didn't happen until he was let go. So, again, I think some games, maybe this young secondary will still get tested a little bit, but it's not going to be this week, because that's not Oregon State's strength. Their strength is the ground game. So really anxious to see how well this defense travels. I would imagine that Oregon State will probably get close to 100 yards, but it's not going to obviously be like what we saw those first 5 games where it was just complete parting of the Red Sea play after play.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not going to be as dominant defensively as we saw, I don't think. But I do think this defense can now keep CU in games, right? I think they'll be able to do that and keep it to where the score is manageable. Now, the question I have is the offense, because even as good as everything was on Saturday, all the good vibes, all the energy, all that, the offense still was not very good. And, the quarterback play was okay at times. I thought J.T. Stroud did a nice job coming off the bench, but they managed 13 points in regulation and left a lot of points on the board. And, you have to look at this offense and say, when is that going to actually crank up? Because that still hasn't happened.
And I know in this generation, because everybody can play Madden and they think they're an offensive coordinator, wants to criticize the play calling. I've had less of an issue with that than a lot of fans out there, because you really can point to so many different plays where it's like, that's not on the coaches. That's just an execution issue. And if they execute, I don't still think this is going to be a top half of the Pac-12 type offense, but they've left a lot of points out on the field through the first 6 games. So that's the key. target Montana Lamonius Craig maybe a little bit more too, because you target him 8 times in a game and he pulls down 8 receptions. So when you have a guy that can pull down 50-50 balls like he's shown the ability to do, I think that's a guy that you have to make a point to really target. And I don't know what the deal is with R.J. Sneed. I know going into the season it was a foot injury, but this is a guy that's played a lot of football, made a lot of plays at Baylor. I'd like to see him get involved a little bit more in this team as well. And they might be without Deion Smith and Alex Fontenot again this week. So anxious to see Anthony Hankerson. He's gotten some really tough yards and scored a touchdown in 2 of his first 3 games, which is awesome, but I want to see him break a couple of those runs.
Yeah, I think he's capable of it. It's just a matter of, will he actually do that? I think offensively, that's what worries me about the last 6 games is, they're going to have to score, 24, 28 points to win any of these, or to have a shot to win any of these games. And, I don't know if I'm capable, or if I'm confident enough to be able to say they can do that, because their high water mark is still 20 and they've reached it in the last 2 games, but one time they needed overtime to do it. So I'm still not sure we're going to see that yet. Offensive line wise, I think they're coming together a little bit. They got some rotation at tackle. I talked to Kyle Devan today, and he said he likes all 3 of those guys. That sounds like that rotation will continue. Van Wells just continues to get better at center. Anything else from any interviews we've done this week that impresses you?
Had a chance to talk with Mark Smith, and yeah, guys have really bought into their new roles. It's really breathed new life into this team, and so you've got to continue to keep showing that on the field. Otherwise, that can go by the wayside. But it's been fun to be around here the last 3 weeks, really, since Mike Sanford took over. He's just got such an infectious personality.
Yeah, it has definitely been a lot more fun to be around here in recent weeks. So let's get into game prediction. You and I are both going up to Corvallis this week, and the Buffs have had some success up there, but I think it's against some worse Oregon State teams. This is a better Oregon State team. What are your thoughts on prediction?
Yeah, I want this energy that's around this program to push me into picking a CU upset victory on the road, but I just can't get there, and that's because I do have such healthy respect for the program that Jonathan Smith has built there. When he got hired, it wasn't a flashy hire, but he's just done it the right way and gotten to the point where they don't even have to play the transfer portal game this past offseason. They had bought into his vision there, and so I've been really impressed with that. You look at this football team, there's a couple weak spots. Their quarterbacks turn the ball over. We don't know if Chance Nolan's going to start or Sam Goldbrinson. Yeah. Both those guys have turned the ball over, and Oregon State's kickers struggled this year. But aside from that, you look at it pretty much across the board, aside from those 2 areas, they've been top half of the Pac-12. Really good defense, really good secondary, and so it's just going to be tough for a Colorado offense that's already struggled to go on a road environment. It might be raining there. Yeah. It's going to be tough. And so until Colorado's offense can prove that it can score points against a team like this, I just can't pick the upset victory here. So I'll say that Oregon State wins this game 31-17, which I know based on what happened last Saturday, you'd really like to catapult that to more success, but still 31-17 would be nothing to sniff at, and it would at least be a step on the road in the right direction.
And you're steering people to pick CU to cover the spread. So I'm thinking along the same lines as you. I have a lot of respect for this Oregon State team. You and I had talked about Cal last week, kind of being that picture of mediocrity team. I think Oregon State surpassed them in that regard. This is a team that can win on any given Saturday, and they almost beat USC a few weeks ago. I think they're really tough to beat out there. CU has had success there, but again, against some worse Oregon State teams. I like Oregon State too much in this game. I think if the Buffs can capitalize on some of those mistakes from the quarterbacks and force some of them, they have a shot. But until I see this offense actually score more than 20 points in a game and more than 13 in regulation like we saw last week, it's hard to pick them to win, especially on the road. I'll pick a little bit closer than you, but I'll go 27-17 Oregon State in this one. And the Buffs, to me, even with that, and kind of like you said, still gain a little momentum off of last week and can take that into next week against ASU.
Yeah, and hopefully it stays dry out there, because we've had some bad memories about covering games in the Pacific Northwest when it's raining. It hasn't gone so well for the Buffaloes.
No, it has not, and even in Colorado Springs in the rain earlier this year. So, but Adam and I will be in Corvallis. We'll talk about the game afterwards.